In the latest chapter of One Piece, chapter 947, Ichiro Oda has finally started to explain more information about Armament Haki. Information that a lot of folks have been waiting for a fairly long time. Because Armament Haki has been a kind of confusing power pool within One Piece simply because Oda didn't give us the details that we needed. And now in the latest chapter of One Piece, chapter 947, Oda has given us these details. Not only that, but Oda has potentially alluded to something that existed in pre-time skip, because a lot of folks had notions on Armament Haki pre-time skip, but Oda may have just made a subtle move to try and clear some of that confusion up. But before we get to that, I want to focus specifically on what we can confidently say are the 4 stages of Armament Haki. And mind you, these are the ones that we can confidently say exist. There are some potential outliers, but we'll get to that very soon. So stick around, because we're going to go step by step, piece by piece, and break down everything we currently know about Armament Haki. Now, the first stage of Armament Haki is the stage that we all are accustomed to, where it's an invisible aura which increases your damage output, gives you some more defense maybe, but mainly used to fight against Logia. So this is what we see Marco and Vista use pre-time skip, but if we're going to exclude pre-time skip, think of Luffy and the Pacifista, think of Peckham's and Caribou, where they're using Armament Haki, clearly, because Caribou's a Logia, and Peckham's able to hit him and damage him and knocks him out of one attack. And when it comes to Pacifista, Luffy is using Armament Haki, and Sentomaru tells us this, but we don't see him using any degree of hardening. Another example of this would be, let's say, Luffy talking to Trafalgar Law about who can damage Caesar Clown, and he says himself, Zoro, and Sanji. But among that trio, Sanji has very few, if any, Armament Haki hardening instances. There are some in the anime, maybe a panel or 2 in the manga, but it's nowhere near clear. But we do know for a fact that he does have Armament Haki at the bare minimum. So stage 1 is essentially the basic level of Armament Haki, where in which it's an invisible aura that you can control that you put on various body parts to defend or attack. And like I said before, this allows you to bypass the natural defenses of Delphi users that have certain degree of body augmentations. So we're talking about Luffy's rubber ability, we're talking about a lot of Logias, the list goes on and on. It allows you to bypass the Devil Fruit ability itself and hit their quote-unquote true body. Stage 2 is Armament Haki Hardening, and this of course is abundant across the New World. Luffy, Zoro, Doflamingo, Katakuri, Cracker, Jinbei, Big Mom, the list goes on and on and on. This is the most prolific Armament Haki that we've seen in One Piece post-time skip. In a sense, you can say it's Oda's way of visualizing Armament Haki, but it is clearly a step above because there are folks that use Armament Haki, like Peckham's, without hardening, and then there are other folks that use Armament Haki that do harden. And the hardening ability, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, the regular Armament Haki can go from 1 to 25. The Armament Haki Hardening can go from 26 to 100, something of that sort, where it grants you more defense and more offense compared to regular Armament Haki, and you can still hit Logia. Now, there are some characters that have shown the ability to manipulate Armament Haki Hardening in various ways. A key example of this is Luffy, where we have Bound Man, where Bound Man is the harmonization of both Armament Haki Hardening and Rubber. But it's a harmonization of 2 different powers, therefore it's not a completely different power pool or different stage. It is still under the wing, the scope of Armament Haki Hardening. Another example of this would be full body Armament Haki, in the case of Virgo, in the case of Pika, where full body Armament Haki is just another way of incorporating Armament Haki, but it's throughout your entire body. Another variant of stage 2 would be the Edge Mochi of Katakuri. Now this one could be a bit confusing here because Katakuri, when you use the Edge Mochi for the first time, depending on where you read the chapter or depending on the translation that you read from, some folks I can see making the argument that Katakuri's Edge Mochi is actually another stage, a whole different stage. However, the issue with the Block Mochi or the Edge Mochi is that it is the Mochi Devil Fruit. The Mochi that he normally uses is first formed into a square, and then he hardens that and he condenses it with Armament Haki Hardening. So instead of saying it's a different stage entirely, it's better to say that it is the highest stage, or one of the highest stages of stage 2. So let's say Luffy's Armament Haki Hardening is a 35 or a 40 or a 50. Katakuri's with his edge Mochi would be a 60 or a 70 or an 80. In the same way, Luffy was harmonizing his Armament Haki Hardening with the rubber in Gear 4 Bound Man, is the same way Katakuri is harmonizing the Armament Haki with his Mochi, making the edged Mochi. Another very good example of this combination of Devil Fruit and Armament Haki is, let's use the same two characters here, Luffy and Katakuri. When Katakuri first attacked Luffy during the wedding, he attacked Luffy with this kick that was a Mochi wave, and it was clearly covered in Armament Haki, but it was sticky. So it wasn't anywhere near as compact as the edge Mochi, but it maintained its stickiness, and Luffy's hands and legs were enveloped in the Mochi of Katakuri's kick. Jinbei had to free Luffy for Luffy to escape. On the flip side of that, look at Tank Man compared to Bound Man. Because Luffy had consumed so much food, in Tank Man, even though Cracker could cut through Bound Man, when he tried to pierce through Tank Man, he failed to do so. Bound Man maintains elasticity when it comes to Armament Haki, just how Katakuri in some cases can maintain stickiness with Armament Haki, but in the case of Tank Man was damn near fluid, and the Cracker was sucked into Luffy. So the main reason why, when it comes to Devil Fruit and Armament Haki combinations, right now I can't just put them as a whole different stage, because it just appears to be simply the application of Armament Haki to certain Devil Fruit techniques, and it's different not only from power to power, but from technique to technique. It's all about the application of the Armament Haki Hardening itself. So once again, the edged Mochi is Mochi covering his forearms and his fingers, because his fingers aren't normally squares, nor is his forearm. He makes them into blocks, and then he hardens them with Armament Haki Hardening to the point where they're, again, very dense, compact, and pack way more power than Luffy's regular Armament Haki, which is just on his skin. Another example I would say of going back to stage 1 is Cracker. Cracker, when he was in his false body, used a skill called the Hard Biscuits. And the Hard Biscuits had no visible Armament Haki hardening on them. That was, let's say, the highest stage of stage 1. Let's raise the limit of stage 1 Armament Haki. Let's say that it can go from 1 to 50, and Cracker was a 50. And his stage 1 was better than, let's say, Luffy's Armament Haki stage 2 that was at a 40, which is why Luffy, no matter how hard he was trying in Gear 2 and in Gear 3, he couldn't break through the Hard Biscuits of Cracker when he was in his false body, and he needed Gear 4 in order to break the false body of Cracker. So using this number scale to differentiate power within the stages gives us a better idea on things like, why can't Luffy break through Cracker's Armament Haki with his Armament Haki Hardening, even though we've seen a hardening on his Biscuit shield? Or why is it that Luffy's Armament Haki Hardening is losing out to Katakuri's Armament Haki Hardening? Or why Zoro was able to cut through Pika, even though Pika was using full body Armament Haki Hardening, and Zoro was only using Armament Haki Hardening on his swords? Of course, the magnitude of the attack behind the Haki matters as well, obviously, but I'm just doing this for simplicity's sake. That is the best way to view Armament Haki Hardening in this case. Not a different stage, but more so variants within the stage of stage 2. Now moving on, stage 3 is the Deflection Haki, the invisible aura attack that we saw both Rayleigh and Sentomaru use in pre-time skip. In chapter 939, Hyogoro the Flower does this exact same technique on Alpaca Man when Luffy and Hyogoro are in the sumo ring fighting for their quote-unquote lives, while collars are around their necks. Luffy explains to Hyogoro what he's trying to do, and Hyogoro demonstrates the exact same ability that Luffy is trying to learn. And from then on, Hyogoro mentors Luffy in this style of Haki. And Hyogoro does call it Ryuo, but the Ryuo is simply the Wano Kuni name for Haki, just how in Skypiea, they called Observation Haki Mantra. This stage 3 is the beginning of what is known pretty much as Advanced Armament Haki, or Advanced Boost Social Haki. I did a video on this subject already in greater detail, link in the box below, but essentially it is channeling the Haki throughout your entire body into a particular point, mainly in your fist or in pre-time skip through your palm. Whether it's Sentomaru, Marigold, when Luffy kicked her, it was contact, so maybe it wasn't exactly the same thing, but for sure, Rayleigh, obviously the Admirals when they blocked the shockwave of Whitebeard, where you're emitting the Armament Haki outside of your body, a few inches away from your palm or from your fist. And this is doing so without a sword or a spear or a gun even, or a bullet, without a medium to put the Haki into it. The reason why Sentomaru could send Luffy flying without touching Luffy in the first place was because of this advanced / deflection style of Haki. Now this style of Haki can also incorporate the breath of all things that Zoro unlocked for a few seconds against Mr. One, to be able to cut through anything and cut through nothing, and that's how you learn how to cut through steel. Projecting the Haki without a medium is a deflection, but into a medium is simply adding Haki to a blade of some kind. In the Viz translation, Hyogoro says, and I quote, "Straw Hat Fellow, in Wano, there is an invisible power that stems from the body and can be infused with the blade. A good katana will cut through steel when you want it to, and it will not break a sheet of paper if you do not wish it so. It is all according to the desire of the swordsman." And after he states this to Luffy, he takes out Pac-Man with the stage 3 deflection style of Haki. So a lot of folks theorize that because it is very similar to a swordsman putting Haki in their blade, and the blade is the medium in this case, but without a medium, it follows the same concept. Zoro in the future will probably learn this style of deflection advanced Haki. And in the latest chapter, One Piece chapter 947, Ichiro Oda further explains this. It protects you much like an invisible armor, and it increases the strength of your attacks. So if we take into consideration what we saw in the latest chapters of One Piece, and then what we've seen pre-time skip, you can say that there are two other variants of stage 3 deflection invisible aura Haki that we've seen so far in One Piece. Number one, in pre-time skip, if you follow the same pattern as Sentomaru, as Rayleigh, and as the Admirals, you can raise your palms and you can have it come out your palms, and as far as we know, in this case, it is without Armament Haki Hardening. But in post-time skip, we only have Hyogoro as an example of this. And Hyogoro is using Armament Haki Hardening every time he does the stage 3 deflection advanced Haki. Stage 4, advanced Armament Haki, is what Rayleigh did to save Kami back in Shibuya Archipelago. We see a flashback of this in the latest chapter, and Hyogoro explains how what Luffy did in the last chapter, chapter 946, is an advanced version of what Hyogoro was trying to teach Luffy. So Luffy, in these two chapters, essentially skipped levels. He kind of skipped stage 3 when ranked to stage 4. So since he is getting a grasp of stage 4, in theory, going back to stage 3 should be easier to learn. But, and I quote, according from Hyogoro himself, "But there is another step further than that. It allows the user," this is stage 4, "it allows the user to transfer the gathered Haki into the enemy's body and destroy them from the inside out. It is far more powerful. The aura of the invisible armor can go into an object or into an enemy and destroy them from the inside out." And in the flashback that we get of Rayleigh saving Kami in Shibuya Archipelago, we see Rayleigh use Armament Haki Hardening. A lot of folks have their take on this, but I would say it indicates clearly that Luffy, because he wasn't aware of what Haki was, we never saw Armament Haki Hardening until post-time skip. Rather than simply saying that Oda didn't have it fleshed out, at the bare minimum, it's Oda's way of kind of backtracking and fixing the issue by giving us Luffy's perspective now on what Rayleigh did and seeing how Armament Haki Hardening was used. Because this is Luffy's flashback on the matter, and Luffy's not fully aware of what Armament Haki is. So that one, of course, is still fairly shaky. But stage 4 seems to require a stage 2. So this would explain why Luffy could jump from stage 2 to stage 4, because stage 3 is more like an advanced version of stage 1, where it is particularly invisible aura oriented. All you have to do is take the haki that is around the body, and this is another video entirely, but it's in some cases called unnecessary haki, but again, another video for that one. But you take this unnecessary haki and then you channel it in invisible aura from your palm or from your fist, from your leg, wherever you want to put it, and it pushes and it damages, it deflects from making contact with said invisible aura. But stage 4, the aura seeps into the object or the person and it destroys it from the inside out. So these are things that have been nitpicky, but in chapter 939, with the flashback of Luffy remembering what Rayleigh and Sentomaru did to the elephant to himself, there was no signs of Armament Haki hardening being used on the part of Rayleigh or Sentomaru. But in the recent flashback in chapter 947, there was Armament Haki hardening there. This is very nitpicky, but in order to use stage 3 right now, if we take into consideration pre-time skip, there is no indication that you need Armament Haki hardening, with the exception of Hyogoro the Flower. So in the case of Rayleigh and the collar, the aura seeps into the collar, which then destroys the collar from the inside out, which then allows Rayleigh to throw away the collar fairly quickly to save Hamey from any harm. So if you can learn how to do this mid-attack, you're essentially doing miniature gamma knives, which is very powerful, bypassing a target's defenses, probably, and going right for the internal organs. Now, there could be a case where in the future we see folks use hardening on their organs, which would be pretty intense if you can use hardening on your organs, or use Armament Haki on your organs to defend from this stage 4 attack. But that being said, to do this fairly quickly will require a lot of skill, a lot of concentration, but if you can get it done and attack this consecutively, it's an extremely powerful tool, a devastating power. And these are the 4 stages of Armament Haki that currently exist in the world of One Piece. Again, there are some variants, and I understand when it comes to pre-time skip and post-time skip, it's still shaky. It's still very shaky. But I think Oda is making an attempt here to try and resolve the issue, because obviously folks like Whitebeard, folks like Shanks, folks like Akainu, Kizaru, Sengoku, Blackbeard, they knew Armament Haki existed. They were used Armament Haki. Even Blackbeard says to Luffy, his Armament Haki did improve, apparently, in Impel Down. Zoro kind of used it against Mr. One. It's existed in various ways in pre-time skip. Just how in the East Blue, Devil Fruits were rare, they were myth, they were legend. You had guys like Luffy and Buggy, you had some outliers. And then towards the end of the East Blue, we have Smoker, who's like revealed to be a Logia, I think, in the East Blue. But then, we don't get the Zoans until Drum Island and Chopper in the Grand Line, and then the Duck Fruit system is fully fleshed out, well, mostly fleshed out, with the exception of Awakening, come the end of the Grand Line. But we get to see little snippets of Haki here or there in some isolated places, like let's say in Skypiea or in Amazon Lily. We get little snippets of Haki here or there, and then now that we're entering the new world, Armament Haki, Observation Haki, all the Hakis are abundant, and probably towards the later half of the New World saga, if you would, Oda will flesh out Haki in its entirety. And Oda has shed light on Armament Haki in the latest chapter of One Piece. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm going to catch you guys and gals later.